This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Jimi Gibson on the show. He is the Vice President of Brand Communication at Forbes Agency, and he has had lots of experience in digital marketing. He's an author. He's a TEDx speaker, lots of cool stuff, and they have a really cool culture there over at Thrive, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. With all that being said, Jimi, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Excited about our conversation.
Yeah, if you don't mind, tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are in your career, and what is it that you do over at Thrive?
Sure. It's kind of a weird start. I actually started out very interested in magic and was a professional magician. And through my experience working with a company that wanted me to do some promotional shows, I hung out at the ad agency and I thought, wow, if I can have a career that was sort of like magic, it would be marketing and advertising. And so I actually started through the creative track, became a creative director, ran an agency. And yeah, always sort of saw the lens through that performance and capturing attention and keeping people curious. And so we may get into that, but have worked at a variety of agencies. I came to Thrive just about 5 years ago, actually to expand their strategy department. And I'm sort of left brain, right brain. I believe if you don't have a good strategy, you're going to end up somewhere pretty expensive and somewhere you don't want to be. So we always like to start that talking about the strategy and where a client wants to go. And then I was able to move into executive leadership shortly after doing what I needed to do to get the strategy team in place, and just enjoy working with a variety of clients. We've sort of been behind the scenes for the last 20 years. We celebrate our 20th anniversary in October. And yeah, just want to maybe help folks out there who are trying to navigate this crazy world of AI and digital marketing, and telling some stories about our growth over the years. And yeah, just excited to dig in wherever you'd like.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about, before we get into Thrive, the culture there, and kind of some of the things that you guys do specifically. Tell me about how you've seen AI change some of the processes, or if you will, the patterns that people follow when it comes to digital marketing, because there's been a big shift there, especially with like search and,
Yeah.
like with Jim and I just answer your questions instead of sending you to websites to find those answers and things like that.
Yeah. There's all sorts of phrases that are around. Probably the one right now that everybody is talking about is the zero-click world, where folks aren't going to visit your website. They're going to be agents that visit your website. I would say, yeah, the adoption rate is amazing for these AI tools. We're probably familiar with ChatGPT and the ability to write content. Folks might be creating imagery. ChatGPT has gotten a little bit better. Folks are probably familiar with Midjourney, some of those tools. And one of the challenges that we see is folks just expecting an AI tool to be able to write copy for a website or use in social media. And I think what's happening is there's a lot of very generic garbage that's out there. And we're working with our clients to make sure that they express their experience, expertise, authority, trustworthiness. And those are the things that these large language models are actually picking up. We're almost rewinding the clock back to the days of PR. And when a business has a subject matter expert, whether that be the founder, the owner, someone within the organization who's able to talk about things that you can't get out of a prompt, then the way that search happens in the past, you would put in a keyword or something you were looking for. and it would return back a search page, and there would be a bunch of blue links that you would click, and you would have to choose, okay, am I going to go with the first, the second, the third? But now it's actually having more contextual relevance. There's going to be a lot of customization as to what the results are that are brought back. It's more of a summary. It's consulting with you on, how you want to proceed. If you and I did a separate search on a trip we were planning, it's going to know what trips have I taken in the past versus what trip you've taken in the past. And so we have to look at that. And so the bigger the footprint, the more authentic that footprint is, and the more real content that's out there, the more likely it is you're going to show up. And we're seeing evidence of that in how we consult with folks related to SEO and search and how they're behaving on social media. We're also seeing results now from social media posts that are showing up where they didn't in the past. So I think it's a bigger footprint. It's a crazy world, and we've all got to sort of take it one step at a time.
Have you guys seen anything like this is one story that I heard recently where an employee, their company, a really large company, had a Copilot enabled for everybody in their tenant, and they were using, Copilot to do different things. They were promoting like, hey, use Copilot because it's all held to our tenant. It's, protected. It's not going to get out in the public. And they had an employee, I don't know if it was in payroll or HR, happened to use Copilot to help them do some modifications on a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet had all the salary data in there. So as they went through that, it populated it, and then all of a sudden now Copilot is very familiar with each employee and their salary. So any other employee could go in there and just happen to say, hey, how much does Jimmy make? And Copilot would politely tell them what the salary of that employee was. Have you heard any kind of negatives coming about with people, with things maybe they posted on social media or other things that they've shared maybe coming to light?
Yeah, I haven't heard any specific stories like that. That's a little bit scary, but I think we have to have a different level of responsibility, especially in regulated industries like medical, financial, legal, those types of things, and understand that no matter how much these AI companies say that they're not learning or they're not sharing that data, it is out there. It's in the public domain. There are ways that you can lock down and you can have a more closed environment. And so I think we're seeing organizations having roles that are specifically related to protecting data. And I would say just be careful and don't put anything in there that you wouldn't want hanging on the bulletin board in the office, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's the right approach. Just make sure, if you're not willing to put it on your company's public website, don't toss it out to ChatGPT just yet.
Yeah, it's a little scary. But I think probably that wasn't a malicious thing. It was just they were wanting to use the tool to help speed something up and maybe didn't think through the unintended consequences there.
Yeah, and they don't really know how it happened exactly. They assume it was somebody using the tool to edit a spreadsheet. But I talked to one person, and they were saying, well, it could be as simple as they had a SharePoint site that they didn't link anywhere, but Copilot had access to it, and they just did not put permissions on that SharePoint site. So, and Copilot's mind is, this is company data. Everybody has access to it, so therefore I should share this data.
Yeah.
It may have been as simple as that, because, if you have Copilot enabled on a global level and you have data that's globally available, then it has the rights to share that. And it could be as simple as they just didn't like it on the SharePoint site because no one knew it existed anyway.
Yeah, and I think you said it was a larger organization, so now that becomes an even bigger problem because of the size of the organization and all the data points in that organization. And, it's probably gonna be a bigger deal to the results that may or may not come from that little blunder. So
yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, just tell me a little bit about like your time at Thrive and what the culture's there like, and why you were excited to go there.
Yeah, so I had worked a lot of small, medium-sized agencies, and I really wanted to experience what it was like to work in a larger organization. So we've got about 175 employees. Again, been around for 20 years, have about 1,000 active clients. Different environment. I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose the feeling of a smaller agency, even though we have a lot of remote employees and we're not going into a large building every day. And so one of the cool things that happened is strange. We do a group interview, which I didn't realize before I got on the interview. I was reading, and you know how you kind of read and you're like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, did it really say that? And so, yeah, I was on an interview with other candidates going for the same position.
Wow.
And I told my wife like 5 minutes before the interview, I said, I think I'm getting ready to get on this group interview. And she's kind of introverted and she's like, I wouldn't show up. And I'm like, oh, I've got to. And it was actually a cool thing because to have that pressure of being on the call, how do you interact with the other folks who are basically going for the same role that you're going for? It just felt like we were sitting around uh, in a living room and enjoying the fact that there were other smart people in the room. And that sort of started the sort of the triggers in my brain going, something different here, something different here. And then the owner got on, and everybody who was interviewing for any kind of role, he did uh, about a 30 to 45-minute call. And whether you were moving forward in the process or whether you were starting the process, everybody who was in that process met with the owner. And they talked about Thrive Camp and they talked about this. And so I had recorded the call and I showed it to my wife afterwards. And she goes, I think you found your people. And I was like, I think you're right. And so I was excited to be able to come on board. We spent a lot of time with making sure the core values were not just something that were slapped up on the wall. They spell growth, and every employee knows what they are. Gratitude, respect, ownership, work ethic, think bigger, and honesty. And like, the time that we're recording this is Thursday. And so we have what we call Thank a Thriver Thursday. And so everybody in the company is encouraged to just thank somebody in the company on Thursday. And I actually look forward to it because it helps me just sort of stop and ground myself and go, who did I cross paths with this week and who do I appreciate? And if you can imagine 175 people all thanking somebody else,
Mhm.
um, that's a pretty cool thing to happen on a Thursday. So get a lot of feedback with that. We also want folks to understand that the work we do should have impact around the world. You're part of a community. So we encourage giving from financial and also giving from a time perspective. And we have goals and we track those on a monthly basis and we report on those at our company meeting. And so we have a matching program. If you want to support some sort of organization in your community or wherever you are, we'll match that to a certain dollar amount. And then we want you, if you're a writer, go help a nonprofit write their website. If you just want to get out and do some physical activity and sweat, go help somebody clean up, whatever it is in your community. And so that's a fun thing to see what other folks are doing. And then every new client that we onboard, we actually ask a Thriver to participate in choosing someone around the world to give a Kiva loan to. So that's just a micro loan website where you can see where an entrepreneur around the world needs some help. And so we ask them to participate. We don't ask them to donate. We just say, who connects with you and who do you think we should sort of give this micro loan to? Yeah, so I would say a lot of those are just sort of what people experience. And they're like, really, this is real? Like, yeah, it's just, it makes for fun conversation. There's a bunch of other stuff that we do. I mean, we celebrate people's tenure. Most agencies have about a 30 to 50% attrition rate per year, which is crazy. We've been able to maintain like a 5% voluntary attrition um, over the last 5 years, which is amazing. We have people that leave for a variety of reasons, and then they realize the grass isn't greener, and so they come back. And so we have a lot of boomerang thrivers, we call them. Um, we celebrate 4 or 5 people every month, what we call the honor chair.
Mhm.
And when somebody nominates somebody else for the honor chair, they have to name what core value they're nominating them from. So whether, one of the growth core values. So again, it just repeats the understanding of what the growth core values are all about. So yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I like the Think Thursday because it's like a way to intentionally require gratitude, because I think gratitude, people take things for granted. It's very easy to take things for granted and people for granted. And it's just a way to kind of incorporate gratitude on a regular basis. Um, and I think that's an important thing. And I think gratitude is really powerful when you really sit back and just, you know, think about the different things that people do on a daily or weekly or monthly basis for your company in general. I think that's just an important thing to do, to take time for that.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it a great thing to do and to be on the receiving end of that gratitude, but they have studies that show that it's good for your mental health, good for your stress levels, good for um, the culture overall. And yeah, it just allows you to slow down and go, wow, I am appreciative of this person who had my back or helped me out with that thing. And um, I think we attract people that love that environment. And that's an awesome thing too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think when you put something out in the world, you're going to attract those things back that are similar. And
Yeah.
that's probably a good reason why, in addition to the culture that you've developed, that, of why you have such a low attrition rate, because when you're bringing in the like-minded people that also enjoy uh, that culture that you have, because they see how exciting it is and how happy the people are working there and the things that you guys are doing, they're going to want to be a part of that. And those are the people that you're attracting as well.
Yeah. And you value that. I think, when we talk about leadership and you talk about culture and you talk about how are you going to impact that, I think there's this confusion that it's a top down thing. And so, I would say if you want a great culture, be part of creating that culture. It's the responsibility of everybody in that organization. It's not, you should bring that attitude to your role, and you can't complain that it doesn't exist if you're not contributing to a better culture yourself. So it should start by looking in the mirror and going, okay, well, what am I doing to create the culture that I want? Um, and if you're not part of it, then why not a better place to start than to say, hey, I kind of don't like it when this happens. Let's not do that anymore. Or, hey, we've got this community event going on. How about we all go down to this community event and uh, kind of rub elbows and be in the community? And yeah, I think there's 100 different ways that it can get started and it can be maintained, but you shouldn't be looking to the leader to start it. You should be working with your leader to help facilitate a better culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a new manager many, many years ago, and it's my first time managing a team, and I got a mentor. And I remember I was complaining to my mentor about how, like, and he worked in a different division of the company, so he wasn't kind of related at all into my leadership stack. But he was familiar with it. He knew the people there, and I was complaining about the culture, how that we have this, heads down working culture. There's not like, they don't open up to allow other people to provide input, to communicate. It's just really, traditional culture that I just didn't like. And I was complaining about it. He's like, well, don't complain about it, change it.
Oh,
And I was thinking, well, how would I do that? He's like, well, let me tell you something. It's really hard to start a train once it gets going. So just start getting going. He's like, it's easy to stop it if you have to ask it for permission to start. And he's like, just get going. Just start making changes within your team, within your group, and see where it ripples out. Look at the effect that happens from it. So with my little team, I had a team of there were 6 of us total at the time. So it was a really small team compared to the whole company. And what I started doing is just little things where we did a lunch and learn, monthly lunch and learn. So everybody was required. I say required, but I wanted them half a day a week. So it could pick any day, any half day a week, and don't do work that we normally do. So this is a software development team. I said, don't write code for any projects we're currently working on. Code something totally different, something you haven't been asked to do, something fun, something not related to a project you're working on. And then once a month on Friday, we'll all bring our lunch. We'll go to the conference room and we'll present the things that we worked on that month and talk about the lessons we learned and how we can incorporate it. And yeah, it was a little slow going at first, but then the team really got behind it. And then we started doing another thing, which once a quarter, we would take a half day on Friday. And we would all use our PTO, and we took a half day on Friday and we would go and volunteer somewhere. So it started out pretty simple. Like we went to the children's detention home. We pressure washed, the outdoor
toys and, playground equipment and stuff like that. And then we did like soup kitchens and stuff. And the team got so excited about it that they started planning their own, and kind of without me. They would just say, hey, instead of doing it every quarter, we're gonna do it every month. And, this is the one I picked, and I've already called them and got it scheduled. And it's like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. And it developed like a culture of giving back. And no one complained about it. None of the upper leadership, said, hey, you can't do that. We need your team here. They never said anything because we got our work done. Not only that, I went from having like the highest turnover in the company, where I lost 2 people in one day, actually, which team of 6, that's 30% of your employees at one point. But I went from not having anybody leave in over 5 years. So it was a really like a big turnaround that changed the culture. And our team during that process, we did all these weird things. Like it was a company with a sea of cubicles, and I just came in one weekend and with our team, and we took the cubicle walls down in our area, and we just left it all open. We pointed the desk all facing each other.
Oh, nice.
And people were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, we want to communicate. We want to remove the barriers of communication." And people were too lazy to roll their chair out to talk to somebody in their cubicle. But if there's no cubicles, they're going to talk. And that's kind of what we did, and it worked out really well. And it kind of spread throughout the department.
That's awesome. I think you touched on a couple of those in your TEDx talk, so I enjoyed watching that. So,
thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about magic and being a magician, because I love magic. I practice little card tricks for my kids, and they think it's hilarious, especially when I mess up. They really like that part. We went on a cruise this year, and my youngest, he's 7. He got called to go up on stage where they did the magic for him, right in front of him, and I was just like blown away. And then it was a mentalist trick later on on the same cruise, and they picked out my 11-year-old to say, like, what time would you do this? And it was in an envelope somewhere, and he was just blown away. How have you, how did you first fall in love with magic, and how have you used that throughout your career?
Yeah, so I was digging through some boxes a couple of years ago, and I found this little membership card to Merlin's Mail Order Magic Club, and I flipped it over, and I was like, that can't be right. And it was when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And then I got a magic kit when I was 6. And then in middle school, I was doing shows for my friends' birthday parties, and their parents were paying me to entertain my friends for their birthday party. I was like, okay, this is kind of weird, but cool. And then I think I mentioned in the intro that in high school, I met a guy that worked at an ad agency, and they were looking for a promotional performer. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that relationship lasted another 16 years. So everybody was working retail or flipping burgers or cutting grass, and I was doing like 50 shows a year for this global brand. And at that time, I also became interested in marketing, and they sort of fed each other. So it was almost like a dual career. I did theme park shows. I've done corporate show at the MGM in Las Vegas. I've had all sorts of opportunities. But I would say, as I reverse engineer what's involved in a magic trick, it's pretty much the same as a marketing message, right? So you have to have a connection point. You have to elicit curiosity. And you're probably thinking about that cruise that y'all went on and, what the magician did. And then there has to be a climax to the trick, or there has to be some resolution. You just mentioned when you get it wrong, that's a bad, climax to the trick. Something fails, right? But that's a call to action, or you're expecting somebody to do something. And so as I started to study this a little bit further, I was like, okay, what exactly is going on? And when you think about it, that connection point, the magician walks out on stage. They may say, hey, I've got this deck of cards. Oh, the guy in the green shirt, what's your name? Oh, and people are listening. They don't realize you have a green shirt on. So I'll say, oh, what's your name? John. Oh, hey, John, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Charlotte. Oh, so we're having a little connection point. John, do you have a deck of cards at home? Yeah, I've got a deck of cards at home. And so the rest of the audience is like, yeah, I've got a deck of cards. And so there's that connection point. That's actually a release of oxytocin, which is a neurotransmitter that is like, hey, things are going great. I like where this is going. And now I've opened up the permission to take it to the next phase, which is curiosity. And so then if I say, all right, John, I just want you to think about all the cards in the deck. We've got 4 suits. We've got high cards, low cards. Do you have, a card that you feel is drawing you in. So I'll just ask you that now. There's black cards and red cards, John. Which would you like to go for?
I would go with the black card.
Black cards. And so we've got clubs or spades. Do you have a preference either way?
I go with clubs.
Clubs, okay.
Puppy dog feet.
Puppy dog feet. Good. Yeah, I'm a puppy guy. And so there's, if we use ace as low, we've got ace through king, which is 13 cards. Would you say you're on the higher end of that or the lower end of that?
I guess I would be on the higher end of that.
The higher end of that. Okay. So like, let's say 7 and above. Give me one of those clubs between 7 and king.
I'd say jack.
The jack of clubs. So we just talked through that, had a little play scenario. Again, people aren't seeing what's happening if you're just listening to the show. But I don't know if you know this, but there's a deck of cards that's been sitting behind me the whole time. Did you notice that?
I did notice that. Yeah. I didn't notice it until you started talking about cards.
Well, if I reach around and grab that deck of cards, open them up. As I spread these out, make sure we get them. You said, oh, wait a minute. Something weird's going on.
No, I see that one's backwards.
Oh, there's one that's backwards.
Yeah.
If I flip that over and that's the jack of clubs, that would be pretty crazy. Jack of clubs.
Yep, there it is. Wow.
Make sure it gets focused there. All right. So what's going on? When we started going back and forth and I was asking you various things about the cards, that's eliciting curiosity. That's actually a release of dopamine. And dopamine, you've heard about social media addiction. It's actually the expectation of closure or an expectation of a reward. And so when you post on social media, you hope somebody likes it, shares it, comments on it. And so that dopamine is kind of getting you all amped up, like what's going to happen next. And if we stretch that out too long, it gets exhausting, right? And so I have to move now to the final phase, which is the conversion or the climax of the trick. And so when I flip over the card and it's the jack of clubs, then all of a sudden there's this release. Oh, wow, everything turned out the way it's supposed to. That's a release of serotonin where it's like everything is right with the world. It makes sense. That's great. And so if you layer that on top of a marketing message, you have to know who you're talking to, right? So you have your ideal client profile. You have to be able to connect with them so they go, oh, I think they're talking to me. Then you have to activate curiosity and they have to go, all right, I'm going to stick with this because I think they may be able to help solve my problem or in my pain, or that's a product that I want. And then you have the offer, whether it's a click to call, whether it's fill out a form, whether it's here's the price. Do you want to buy it? Take it up to the counter, put it in the cart. And so, yeah, I would say that's the relationship between magic and marketing and being able to be an effective communicator. If you're a leader, if you're having a group meeting, you talked about your team. If you're sitting there with your team, you have to be able to connect with them. You have to be able to show empathy, right? You have to get them excited. What if? That's a very powerful word. What if we did this thing, right? You talked about in your TEDx talk about this app that controlled a fountain. Like, how can you bring that to the point where it's like, we're not just creating an app. What if we actually were able to impact our community and kids on the weekend were laughing and having fun and families were interacting? Like, would you like to be involved with that? And so in their brain, they're going, I don't know how that's possible. Well, we've just been presented with this project. It's going to require some overtime. We're going to have to work late because it's sort of this secret project. And now you've sort of rallied everybody else around that and you've brought them to the point where they're like, oh my gosh, absolutely. We'd love to do that. So yeah, I think it has a lot of parallels for marketing leadership and pulling off a magic trick.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking, it reminds me of of almost like combining two different, of taking magic and your experience there and combining it with some of the things that, Simon Sinek talks about with, start with why and finding your why that you build up upon. But then also like when you look at the, putting in the brain chemicals with, and relating that and even, taking it even a step deeper. So yeah, I love the way you put that together, and it all makes total sense to me because that's really what you're doing is you're giving your customer the permission to be curious about your product and then trying to close the deal and give them that serotonin that at the end. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think in the rushed world that we're in right now, people think they've made an authentic connection. They assume there's a connection there, and then they rush to the close. And that feels icky because we haven't spent the right amount of time in each one of those phases. So I would say that's a warning sign to just make sure you're not trying to fake the process, that it's got to happen the way it needs to happen.
Mm. Yeah. So what advice would you have to people that when they're using tools or marketing or trying to grow their business and they want to get that, make sure they have that authentic connection? How do they go about doing that online? Because that seems to be kind of a challenge that people fall into where, to build that funnel that gives you that connection.
Yeah. I'll give you so that's always the question, right? Where do I start? How do I sound authentic? What do I talk about? How do I connect with the audience to the point if I don't have them sitting in front of me, what do I do? And so I would relate that back to the 5 fingers that we have. And I guess it comes from being a magician and doing sleight of hand. So if we start with the pinky, and for those of you listening, I'm sort of holding up my left hand here. We probably remember that pinky promise that we had on the playground. And when you latched fingers, you said, I pinky promise to do this. You didn't break that promise. And so what promise are you making to your ideal customer? If you're a service provider, what are you doing to ensure that you're giving the best service you can? If you're creating a product, what materials did you choose? What are you promising them? Are you going to fulfill that promise? How brave of a promise are you going to make? Do you have a risk reversal of a guarantee of some sort? If you're a leader, what promise are you making to your team? So those are great places to start, and people can learn a lot about you by the promises that you make. The next one is the ring finger, and you might think that's a promise. It's actually about relationship and passion that you bring to it. What are you passionate about? We all know that passion is infectious. If you're really excited to talk about something, it can relate, and it can transfer. But then how long are you in it for this relationship, right? My wife and I just celebrated 20 years. Thinking about a 20-year relationship is a lot different than just trying to make a quick sale. And so people can feel whether or not you're in it for the long haul or if you're trying to make a quick sale, right? And so how are you communicating that in a way that's about a long-term relationship? The next one is the middle finger. And don't worry, I'm not flipping John off here. I've got all 5 fingers up. A lot of people think that's a vulgar expression. It's actually an expression of defiance. And so who are you, proverbially or metaphorically flipping off? There's a villain that you're trying to save your ideal customer from. And if you truly believe your product or service is the best that it possibly can be, it's your responsibility to save them from that villain. It could be a company, it could be a person, it could be an ideology, but you got to call out that villain. And so people can learn a lot about who the villain is that you've identified, and it can rally you and your customers around a common belief. Same thing can happen with a team. Next one is the pointy finger. And I say pointy finger because you should be able to point to one person that is the representation of your ideal client, right? And then when you turn that finger over, you should be able to beckon them in and welcome them into your world and get them excited about what it is you have to offer. The next one is the thumb. And, that's a symbol for thumbs up, everything's going great, or thumbs down, everything's not going great. And so we've all seen these memes about do this, don't do that. You could do the same thing for your brand, right? So what should you do and what should you not do? And then it's also about the thumbprint. What mark are you leaving? What thumbprint are you leaving because of the business that you're involved with? What thumbprint are you leaving on your customer? How did you change their world? What thumbprint are you leaving on your team because they're part of all of this? have 3 sets of twins as nieces and nephews, and they can open each other's phone with their Face ID, but they can't open each other's phone with their thumbprint. It's unique to you. So what is it about your business, you as the leader, whatever that is, that combination of unique things that people should be attracted to? So I would say I've probably just given, 20 or 30 ideas. And when you're stuck and you're worried about how to be authentic, just look at one of your fingers and go, okay, that's not really something I can put in Chat GPT, because people want to know about your uniqueness, your bruises, your scars, all of those things that people are going to understand that you're a well-rounded, textured individual or organization or brand.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love when you talk about how to really truly gain that connection, going through those steps and really being honest about them and open is kind of, where I see is the key. And just, sharing stories, sharing the wins, the successes, and the losses too,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this has been great. Jimmy, thanks so much for coming on the show. How can people, if they want to learn more about the things that you guys are doing over at Thrive and want to, learn more about your processes or even get some help with things, how can they connect with you online and continue the relationship?
Yeah. So thriveagency.com is the URL. It's a huge site, lots of resources on there. I write a blog every month for our company site, and then it has about a 20-minute video that accompanies that. We have lots of information, but yeah, we're full service. So if anybody has any challenges with marketing in the digital sphere, be happy to chat with them. I'm on LinkedIn every day, sharing some sort of tip or encouragement or viewpoint of the world that we're in, and people can connect with me there. Tell me that you saw me on the show. Love to chat through DMs, or we could set up a call, and just happy to chat more about anything we talked about today.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And I'll have all those linked up in the show notes at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through as well. Again, Jamie, thanks so much for coming on.
Great. Had a great time, John. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. Make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.